Not every tragedy begins with a scream. Not every mistake comes with arguments or anger. Some mistakes begin with silence, a silence that lasts less than 3 seconds, but long enough to change the lives of many people. The lobby of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle on Monday morning. Early sunlight streams through the towering glass ceiling, reflecting off the polished marble floor. Everything here is designed to create one feeling. You are standing in the presence of power. Perfectly pressed suits, leather shoes are polished until they mirror the lights above. Hushed conversations about stocks, mergers, and numbers capable of reshaping entire industries. Near the large windows overlooking the square, Evelyn Harper stands there. 41 years old, CEO and founder of Harper Dynamics, the technology company once described as the future of enterprise data. Evelyn wears a light cream blazer, immaculately tailored. Her hair is pulled neatly back, not a strand out of place. On her ears are small diamond earrings, subtle enough not to appear flashy, yet expensive enough to signal exactly which world she belongs to. She is smiling, a smile honed over years spent in windowless boardrooms, in front of cold boards of directors, in front of investors who trust confidence more than truth. Two men standing across from her nod along as she speaks. They are partners from Europe, the same ones who had said no just a week earlier. But Evelyn believes that with enough charm, enough persuasion, and the proper positioning, anything can change. Evelyn Harper is used to that, used to being listened to, used to others offering their hand first, used to walking into a room and assuming, correctly, that she belongs there. And then, a man appears at the edge of the lobby. He makes no noise, does not interrupt, does not try to draw attention to himself. He is wearing a dark gray polo shirt, dark khaki pants, white sneakers, clean, neat, yet entirely out of place amid the forest of suits and ties. In his hand is a worn brown leather portfolio, held firmly, as if it contains not just documents, but the result of years of preparation. He slows his steps as he approaches Evelyn, waiting just long enough not to seem rude. Then he speaks. "Ms. Harper?" His voice is low, calm, unhurried. "I'm Marcus Reed. We have a 9 a.m. meeting to discuss the Series D funding round." He extends his hand, an effortless gesture, very human. A handshake, the thing that usually marks the beginning of every business relationship. But Evelyn does not extend her hand. In those exact 3 seconds, many things pass through her mind. Her eyes flick down to the sneakers, pause on the logoless polo shirt, then return to the face of the man standing in front of her. Those 3 seconds contain no words, no music, no dramatic climax, only a silent decision. Evelyn takes half a step back. Her hands remain on her designer handbag as if creating distance is a natural reflex. "I'm sorry," she says, her voice cooling by a degree. "Who are you?" It is not a question intended to be understood. It is a question meant to exclude. Marcus keeps his hand extended, his smile unchanged. "Marcus Reed, from Reed Capital Group. Your office confirmed this meeting 3 weeks ago." Evelyn tilts her head, her expression openly skeptical. "Reed Capital?" She repeats the name as if trying to recall it, or pretending she never has. One of the European partners clears his throat, about to intervene, but Evelyn raises her hand, signaling him to wait. She steps closer to Marcus, close enough for him to catch the faint scent of her expensive perfume. "This is a private meeting for investors," she says slowly, each word carefully chosen. "I don't know where you got this information, but you are interrupting an important discussion." The atmosphere begins to shift. A receptionist looks up from her screen. A woman seated on a nearby sofa pauses her scrolling. Marcus slowly lowers his hand. If there's been a misunderstanding, you can call your assistant. I believe Evelyn does not let him finish. She turns toward the front desk. Excuse me, please call security. There's someone not on the guest list causing a disturbance. The word disturbance drops into the lobby like a heavy object. Several heads turn in their direction. Someone has already pulled out a phone. Marcus stands still. In that moment, a flood of old memories passes through his mind. The times he was asked, "Which department are you from?" when he was actually the keynote speaker. The times he was mistaken for service staff at conferences. The times he was judged before he ever had a chance to speak. He takes a deep breath. "It's all right," he says quietly, just loud enough for Evelyn to hear. "I'll leave on my own." Two security guards approach. No one touches him. No one needs to. Marcus turns and walks toward the glass doors leading to the street. His back is straight. His steps are steady. He does not look back. Behind him, Evelyn has already turned back to the two European partners, her professional smile returning to her face. She brushes at her sleeve lightly as if something had brushed against her. She has no idea that in that moment, she has personally slammed shut the last door that could have saved her company. And this story, it's only just beginning. The glass doors of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel close softly behind Marcus Reed, so quietly that almost no one notices. Outside, the Seattle morning is colder than expected. The air carries the scent of freshly brewed coffee from the corner cafe, mixed with the damp smell of a city waking up after a light overnight rain. Marcus stands still on the sidewalk for a few seconds, not because he is shocked, not because he is angry, but because he needs a moment to breathe. He is used to situations like this, not used to them in the sense of accepting them, but used to them in the sense of understanding all too well what it feels like when someone looks at him and decides everything before he has a chance to say a second sentence. Marcus pulls out his phone. The screen lights up with a new message. "Priya, is everything okay? I just received an email from Harper Dynamics saying the meeting has ended." Marcus stares at the message for a long moment. Then he types his reply, each word slowly. "Cancel my entire afternoon schedule. Book me the earliest flight back to New York." There is a pause, then another message appears. "Priya, what about the $500 million investment?" Marcus looks up at the hotel lobby through the glass. He can see Evelyn Harper smiling and talking with the two European partners, her posture straight, shoulders open, confident, as if nothing had happened. He types, "I just got my answer." Inside the lobby, Evelyn Harper does not look back. She adjusts the lapel of her blazer and turns to the two European men with a flawless smile, a smile that has carried her through dozens of tense meetings, appeared on the covers of business magazines, and convinced others that she is always in control. "Sorry for the interruption earlier," Evelyn says gently. "Lately there have been quite a few people trying to force their way into private meetings." One of the men nods, but his enthusiasm is no longer the same. The other glances at his watch. "We need to head to the airport," he says. "Today's meeting, let's stop here." Evelyn hesitates for a fraction of a second, very brief, but enough to reveal a flicker of irritation. "Of course," she replies. "We'll continue this later." Two quick professional handshakes, then they leave. The hotel lobby returns to its familiar rhythm. Footsteps, quiet conversations, people who believe that today will be no different from yesterday. Evelyn stands alone for a moment. A strange feeling passes through her, not quite regret, but a vague discomfort, as if something is unfinished. But she quickly pushes it aside. Evelyn Harper does not have time for vague feelings. 3 months earlier, Harper Dynamics office, 38th floor overlooking the Seattle skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows make it feel as though the city rests beneath her feet. Evelyn once loved this view. It reminded her of how far she had come. The Ivy League, a prestigious MBA, keynote speeches at tech conferences, the 40 under 40 list. Everything used to feel so clear until it wasn't. The financial report on her computer screen appears to be a silent indictment. Negative cash flow, rising operating costs. Revenue is failing to keep up. $6 million a month. That is how much Harper Dynamics is burning, steadily, coldly, without emotion. Evelyn remembers exactly the day that number appeared in the first board meeting. She nodded and said it was a necessary cost of growth. At the second meeting, she said it was only temporary. By the third meeting, no one asked anymore. They just looked at her, waiting for a solution. Evelyn met with 18 investment funds over the course of 8 months. 18 meetings, 18 presentations, 18 times hearing rejections wrapped in polite language. We'll keep monitoring. It's not the right time. We have some concerns about leadership culture. There is one email she never deletes. Evelyn is very intelligent but tends not to listen. We see risk in concentrating too much power in one individual. Evelyn has read that email many times, not to reflect, but to feel angry. They don't understand me, she tells herself. They don't see the vision. At the same time, in New York, Marcus Reed's apartment overlooks the Hudson River. Not large, not ostentatious. White walls, clean lines. One wall is covered with screens displaying global markets in real time. Marcus stands at the coffee machine pouring slowly, drop by drop. His mornings always begin this way, unhurried, quiet. He remembers the small house in Detroit years ago. Remembers his mother coming home after midnight, exhausted, yet still asking whether he had eaten. Remembers studying under streetlights when the power was cut. Marcus learned early not to make assumptions, because every wrong assumption could cost you a lost opportunity, a full scholarship, Stanford, his first startup. When he sold the company at 29, people said he was lucky. Marcus did not argue. He knew luck only comes when you are ready. At 45, Marcus no longer needs to prove who he is. He only needs to know who he will work with. And that is why he spent 8 months researching Harper Dynamics. Strong technology, a solid engineering team. But the reports on internal culture gave him pause. 3 anonymous reviews from former employees, all people of color. Ignored when proposing ideas. Passed over for promotion despite strong results. Always felt like we had to prove more than others. Marcus did not rush to conclusions. He wanted to meet in person, not to hear a pitch deck, but to look the leader in the eye. That morning in the hotel lobby, Marcus got his answer. Not from Evelyn's words, but from the way she looked at him. From the fact that she did not shake his hand. From the fact that she did not ask a single follow-up question. From the fact that she called security before calling her assistant. Small things, but enough to paint the entire picture. Back to the present. Evelyn Harper steps into the elevator and presses the button for her office floor. The steel doors close, reflecting her own image, polished, powerful, flawless. She does not know that, in just a few hours, that image will begin to crack. Not because of an article, not because of a video, but because of the truth she chose not to see in those 3 fateful seconds. And somewhere in the sky, a flight is carrying Marcus Reed away from Seattle, carrying with it $500 million and a decision that will never be undone. 10:30 a.m. The 38th floor office of Harper Dynamics is so quiet that the steady hum of the air conditioning is clearly audible. Seattle sunlight slants through the floor-to-ceiling windows, drawing long streaks of light across the dark wooden desk. Evelyn Harper sits in front of her computer screen, her hands resting on the keyboard, but not typing. On the screen is her packed schedule, back-to-back meetings, emails awaiting replies, numbers that need explaining. A busy day, like any other. She has forgotten the man in the hotel lobby. Not because the incident was unimportant, but because, in Evelyn's world, anything that does not belong to her is easily pushed aside. A soft knock sounds at the office door. "Come in," Evelyn says, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Jenny, her assistant, steps inside. Typically, Jenny is always brisk, composed, and precise. But today, something is different. Her face is slightly pale, her lips pressed together as if holding back something difficult to say. "Evelyn," Jenny begins, "I need to ask you something." Evelyn exhales, mildly irritated by the interruption. "Make it quick, I have a call with the board in 20 minutes. Jenny takes another step forward and places her iPad on the desk. The screen is still dark. "The man in the hotel lobby this morning," she says slowly. "You told me to remove his information from the system." Evelyn frowns. "Yes? Is there a problem?" Jenny swallows. "Before deleting it, I thought I should confirm." Evelyn turns her chair, finally looking directly at her. "Confirm what?" Jenny turns on the iPad. A headline appears, bold and unmistakable. "Marcus Reed, the billionaire investor you may have misjudged." The Forbes logo sits just below it. Evelyn stares at the screen. For a moment, her mind refuses to process what she is seeing. "No," she says softly. "That's not possible." Jenny does not reply. She scrolls. A photo appears. Marcus Reed, the same face, the same calm expression. In the image, he is standing on the stage of a tech conference, wearing a polo shirt and jeans, holding a microphone loosely in his hand. Beside the photo are cold, precise lines of text. Net worth, $3.9 billion US. Reed Capital Group, $4.1 billion US assets under management. 47 investments, 43 successes. Board advisor to multiple major technology corporations. Evelyn feels her stomach hollow out. "Jenny," her voice turns hoarse. "Tell me, this is another person with the same name?" Jenny shakes her head slightly. "No, I checked the emails. The meeting was confirmed 3 weeks ago, exactly 9 a.m. today. Series D, $500 million. The number 500 million echoes in Evelyn's head like a bell. She grips the edge of the desk. "No, that can't be," she whispers. The pieces begin to fall into place. The worn brown leather portfolio, the unusual calm, the way he never tried to prove who he was. And suddenly Evelyn understands something that tightens her chest. He did not need to prove anything. She had done it for him, by excluding him from the very beginning. Evelyn jumps up from her chair. The swivel chair slides back and lightly strikes the glass wall. The sound cuts sharply through the quiet room. "Call him," she says, her voice higher than usual. "Call him now." Jenny shakes her head. I already tried. There's no response." Evelyn pulls out her phone. Her hands are shaking so badly that she wipes them on her skirt before touching the screen. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. "Mr. Reed?" Evelyn speaks quickly, her voice rushed, stripped of control. "This is Evelyn Harper. I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding this morning. I would very much appreciate the opportunity to explain." She stops and hangs up. She calls again immediately. Voicemail again. Evelyn turns to Jenny. "Get Marcus Brooks in here. Now." 3 minutes later, Marcus Brooks, CFO of Harper Dynamics, walks in. He is still holding a cup of coffee, a stack of quarterly financial reports under his arm. When he sees Evelyn's face, he freezes. "What's going on?" Evelyn slides the iPad toward him. Marcus bends down, reads, then reads again. His expression changes rapidly from confusion to disbelief to horror. "Please tell me this is a joke," he says. Evelyn does not answer. Marcus sets the coffee cup down on the desk. A bit of coffee spills, soaking into the papers. He does not notice. Did you have security escort Marcus Reed out of the hotel?" he asks. Evelyn opens her mouth. No sound comes out. "Evelyn," Marcus says, his voice dropping. "He was our last option." The room seems to shrink. "We've been rejected by 18 other funds," Marcus continues. "Reed Capital was the only one still interested because of our technology. He researched this company for 8 months. 8 months. Evelyn feels her throat tighten. Can we fix this?" she asks, clinging to the question like a fragile thread. Marcus looks straight at her. "He invests based on human values, not pitch decks. Do you know what he's famous for?" Evelyn shakes her head. "For not giving second chances when he's been disrespected." Evelyn's phone vibrates. Not Marcus Reed. Richard Hale, chairman of the board. "Evelyn," his voice is cold without being raised. "I just received a call from one of the European partners. He said you had security remove an investor from the meeting this morning." Evelyn closes her eyes. "There was a misunderstanding." "He said that person was Marcus Reed," Richard cuts in. "Is that correct?" Silence stretches for a few seconds. "Yes," Evelyn says quietly. On the other end, a short, heavy breath. "Do you understand what you've just done?" Richard asks. "We need $500 million to survive, and you publicly humiliate the only person willing to help." "I'm trying to reach him," Evelyn says quickly. "I'll apologize. I'll explain." Richard laughs without any humor. When Marcus Reed walks away from a meeting, his decision is already made. Not because of money, because of principle. The line goes dead. Evelyn stands alone in the middle of the office. Seattle outside is still bright. The city is still moving, but her world is not. She opens her laptop and types Marcus Reed's name into the search bar. Interviews, speeches, quotes she has never read before. The most dangerous prejudice is the one that goes unnamed. People decide you don't belong before you've had the chance to open your mouth. Evelyn closes the laptop. In those 3 seconds in the hotel lobby, she did exactly what those words describe. And for the first time in her life, Evelyn Harper cannot deny that truth. Somewhere outside, beneath the pale gray sky, an aeroplane is carrying Marcus Reed away from Seattle, carrying with it a decision already made, and leaving behind a woman who has just realized that the most excellent form of power is not being heard, but knowing when you were wrong. The night flight from Seattle to New York lifts off the runway at 11:40 p.m. Inside the cabin, soft yellow lights wash over rows of silent seats. Passengers sleep, or pretend to. Evelyn Harper does not. She sits upright, both hands resting on her lap, staring at the back of the seat in front of her as if the answer might be there. She has called Marcus Reed 3 more times. No ringing tone, only voicemail, dry, impersonal. She drafts a long email, then deletes it, drafts a shorter one, then deletes that too. In the end, she sends nothing. Because for the first time in many years, Evelyn understands that an apology written to salvage a situation is not genuine. It is only a strategy. And if she wants to see Marcus Reed, she has to go where he stands. She cannot ask him to return to the place where she pushed him out. 7 a.m., Manhattan. Cold, white ceiling lights brightly light the lobby of Reed Capital Group's headquarters. Marble stretches across the floor, polished enough to reflect every step. Contemporary art hangs on the walls, minimalist, sharp, uncompromising. Evelyn walks in, pulling a small rolling suitcase. Yesterday's cream-colored blazer is still there, but now lightly wrinkled at the shoulders. On the sleeve, a faint, dried coffee stain, the trace of a sleepless night. She approaches the reception desk. "Good morning," she says, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to see Marcus Reed." The young receptionist looks up. Her name tag reads Lisa. Her expression is professional, unhurried. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" Evelyn shakes her head. "No, but this is urgent." Lisa types a few lines on her keyboard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Reed only meets by appointment." "Please tell him I'm here," Evelyn says. "Just 5 minutes." Lisa hesitates. She lifts the phone and speaks softly. Evelyn cannot hear the words, only sees Lisa glance toward her twice. The call ends. "Mr. Reed has meetings all day," Lisa says gently. "Possibly until 6 or 7 this evening." Evelyn swallows. "That's fine," she replies. "I'll wait." Lisa looks at her, momentarily surprised, then nods. "There are seats by the window." 9 o'clock. Evelyn sits on an expensive leather chair, firm and cold. Through the large glass window, Manhattan begins to stir. Reed Capital employees pass by, some carrying laptops, some holding coffee, some speaking quietly. A few glances drift toward her. Some recognize her, some do not. 9:45. Evelyn's back begins to ache. She shifts her posture but does not stand. She does not want to give the impression that she could leave at any moment. 10:30. Lisa brings her a cup of coffee. "Are you sure you still want to wait?" she asks. Evelyn nods. "Yes." Noon. Evelyn calls the flower shop across the street and orders a large bouquet. White roses, simple, understated. She writes a few lines on hotel stationery, her handwriting no longer as steady as usual. "Mr. Reed, I was wrong. I judged you before I knew who you were. If possible, please give me 15 minutes to apologize in person." Evelyn. She hands the flowers to Lisa. "Please, pass these along." Lisa nods. "Of course." 1 p.m. The elevator doors open. Evelyn looks up. Not Marcus. The doors close again. Her heart sinks. 1:45. Lisa approaches. "Ms. Harper," she says quietly, "Mr. Reed received the flowers, but he cannot meet today." Evelyn jumps to her feet. Her eyes sting. "Please," she says, her voice breaking slightly, "please ask again. Tell him I flew in from Seattle. Tell him I won't leave until he gives me 5 minutes." Lisa looks at her, hesitating. Then she nods and makes another call. This one lasts longer. More glances, more silence. Finally, Lisa hangs up. "Mr. Reed will see you," she says. 15 minutes. Conference room B, 4th floor. Evelyn feels her legs weaken. "Thank you," she whispers. Conference room B is a small, enclosed, and windowless space. A long table, 6 chairs. No flowers, no water. Marcus Reed is already seated. Gray shirt, dark jeans. His posture is straight, composed. He does not stand when Evelyn enters. "Ms. Harper," he says, "please, sit." Evelyn sits, her hands clasped together, trembling slightly. "Mr. Reed," she begins, "I came here to—" Marcus raises his hand, stopping her. "Before you apologize," he says, his voice low and even, "I want to make one thing clear." Evelyn stays silent. "You said you didn't know who I was," Marcus continues, as if that were the issue. It isn't. He looks directly at her. The issue is that you saw a black man dressed casually and decided he did not belong there. Each word lands heavily. You refused to shake my hand. You called security. You humiliated me in front of dozens of people. Evelyn feels her throat tighten. If I were a 60-year-old white man in a suit, would you have done that? A pause. No, Evelyn says very softly. I wouldn't have. Marcus nods. That's the problem. You sat in my lobby for 4.5 hours, he continues. Yesterday, you escorted me out in 3 minutes. Evelyn lowers her head. I know, she says, and I am ashamed of that. Shame is a feeling, Marcus replies. Responsibility is action. Evelyn takes a deep breath. I'm asking for a second chance, she says. Not for me, for 3,200 employees. They will lose their jobs if the company collapses. Marcus studies her for a long time. 15, 20, 30 seconds. The silence stretches like a test. I will invest, he finally says. Evelyn's breath catches. But under conditions. He slides a sheet of paper across the table. Evelyn reads. Each line cuts deep. Public apology acknowledging profiling. Independent cultural audit. Board composition. Minimum 40% diversity. $5 million from personal funds. Step down as CEO. You agree to all of it, Marcus says, or I stand up and don't come back. Evelyn sets the paper down, looks up. I agree. Marcus stands. One more thing, he says. This is not punishment. This is change. If you are not truly committed, say so now. I am committed, Evelyn replies. Marcus opens the door. Lisa will see you out. Evelyn walks into the hallway. In the elevator, her reflection appears on the steel doors, exhausted, older than yesterday, but lighter. 15 minutes, and a life has taken a different path. 3 days after the meeting in New York. The press conference room at Harper Dynamics headquarters is packed. Camera lights are switched on early, generating an uncomfortable heat that thickens the air. Microphones are lined up tightly across the podium, each bearing the logo of a major news outlet: Bloomberg, CNBC, the Seattle Times, TechCrunch. Everyone is there. Not to hear about a new product, not to hear about revenue, but to hear a woman admit that she was wrong. Evelyn Harper stands behind the curtain. No makeup artist, no PR team whispering edits to every sentence. She refused them all. The printed statement trembles slightly in her hands, not because of the air conditioning, but because her hands are no longer as steady as they once were. She closes her eyes for a second, then steps out. The room falls silent instantly. The murmurs stop. Only the clicking of cameras remains. Evelyn places both hands on the wooden podium. The cool surface seeps into her palms, reminding her that this is real. There is no way back. 3 days ago, she begins. Her voice does not shake, but it is lower than usual. I committed an act of racial discrimination. A small ripple moves through the room. Pens pause for a fraction of a second, then begin writing faster. I refused to shake hands with an investor, Marcus Reed, solely because of his appearance and the color of his skin. I called security and had him removed from a space where he had every right to be. Evelyn pauses, swallows. There is no excuse for that action, she continues. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a stressful day. It was prejudice, and it caused harm. A reporter in the front row bends down, typing rapidly. Another lifts a phone to capture a close-up of Evelyn's face. No makeup to conceal, no defensive smile. "I take responsibility," Evelyn says, "and responsibility does not end with an apology." She looks down at the paper in her hand. Harper Dynamics will conduct an independent cultural audit. The company's board will reach a minimum of 40% diversity within 12 months. I will personally contribute $5 million to funds supporting businesses founded by people of color. She looks up. And I will step down from my position as CEO to make room for real change. A low murmur ripples through the room, not surprise, but recognition that this has gone far beyond a routine statement. Questions come quickly. "Do you think this apology is enough? Are you only doing this because you were exposed? When will you resign?" Evelyn answers each one slowly. "No," she says. "An apology is never enough. Action is what matters. Perhaps if I had not been exposed, I would not be facing consequences, and that is precisely the problem with the system I benefited from." "Within 30 days, a female reporter raises her hand. "If you could speak to other leaders, what would you say?" Evelyn is silent for a few seconds. "Before you destroy someone with your assumptions," she says, "ask yourself, are you protecting the truth or protecting your ego?" The press conference ends in chaotic noise. Evelyn steps away from the podium. Her legs feel weak, but she does not stop. Within hours, the story spreads everywhere. Bloomberg, Harper Dynamics CEO admits to racial discrimination, committed to sweeping reform. TechCrunch, when bias becomes a business crisis. The New York Times, a refused handshake and Silicon Valley's awakening. Social media explodes. Some praise her honesty. Some say she is only doing it for money. Some argue it is still not enough. Evelyn reads everything. She does not respond. That evening, the board convenes an emergency meeting. Evelyn is not invited. She sits alone in her office, watching Seattle sink into sunset. The orange-purple sky is almost cruel in its beauty. Her phone vibrates. "Evelyn," says Richard Hale, the board chairman, "the board has voted." She closes her eyes. "You will be removed from your position as CEO, effective immediately," he says. "You will remain as a non-executive board member for 6 months. After that, we will reassess." "The replacement?" Evelyn asks, her voice strangely calm. "Marcus Brooks," Richard replies, "COO. The board believes he can lead us through this period." Evelyn smiles faintly. "He'll do well," she says. And this time, it is not courtesy. The call ends. The office grows quiet. Too quiet. In the days that follow, Evelyn's world shrinks. Speaking invitations are canceled. 3 other boards suggest that she step aside. Her LinkedIn profile updates. Former CEO. At a fundraising event in Palo Alto, she enters and notices conversations slow, then stop. People suddenly remember urgent matters elsewhere. Evelyn leaves early. At a grocery store near her home, a woman recognizes her. "You should be ashamed," the woman says, not angrily, just tired. Evelyn stands still. She does not argue. These small moments stack up, not dramatic, not loud, but enough to let someone who once lived in privilege understand what it feels like to be judged by a single glance. Just a tiny fraction of what others endure every day. 1 week later, Marcus Reed stated a spokesperson. "I acknowledge Ms. Harper's admission of wrongdoing and her commitment to change. Accountability is not a moment, it is a process. We will closely monitor to ensure these commitments are fulfilled." Shortly after, Reed Capital Group officially announced a $500 million investment in Harper Dynamics. The company is saved. not because of a speech, but because a price has been paid. That night, Evelyn returns to her quiet home. She does not turn on the leading lights. She sits in the dark in front of her laptop. She opens an old interview with Marcus Reed. The worst thing about prejudice is not the significant actions. It's the thousands of small moments where someone decides you don't belong before you're allowed to speak. Evelyn closes the laptop. She sits for a long time, doing nothing. Not because she has been forgiven, not because everything is fine, but because for the first time in her life, she understands that real change always begins with loss. And this, it is only the beginning of that cost. 6 weeks after the press conference, Harper Dynamics headquarters looks the same as before. The same glass building, the same reception lobby, the same familiar access badges. But inside, everything has changed in ways that are difficult to see with the naked eye. There is no longer a rigid tension whenever senior leadership walks by. No longer meetings where only a few familiar voices dominate the time. Change comes slowly, but it comes from a different kind of silence. Silences that are finally being listened to. Marcus Brooks steps into the role of CEO with the caution of someone who understands that power is not a privilege, but a responsibility. He does not hold a grand introduction. He does not deliver a long speech. He sends only a short email to the entire company. We will begin with the truth. It won't be comfortable, but it's necessary. 3 days later, the independent cultural audit officially begins. External specialists arrive. They interview, they listen, they document stories that had long been buried in silent drawers. Employees are encouraged to speak, anonymously if needed. And for the first time, many dare to believe that their voices might actually be safe. Preliminary findings are presented at an all-hands meeting on a gray Tuesday morning. The auditorium is packed. Employees sit shoulder to shoulder. There are no longer empty rows in the back. On the large screen, numbers appear, unadorned, unpolished. White employees hold 89% of senior management positions. Employees of color are promoted at a rate 42% lower despite equivalent performance records. 23 complaints of microaggressions over 3 years, 21 closed without investigation. No one speaks, not because they are surprised, but because they have lived with this reality for too long. Marcus Brooks stands at the podium, his voice calm, not defensive. This is not an indictment, he says. It's a mirror, and we cannot fix what we refuse to see. He clicks to the next slide. Actions to be taken immediately. Transparent promotion processes, a diverse board, mandatory unconscious bias training for all management, whistleblower protection mechanisms. And most importantly, Marcus says, we will listen more than we speak. Applause fills the room, not loud, not celebratory, just relief. At the back of the hall, Evelyn Harper sits quietly. She is no longer the one at the podium. No microphone, no lights, just a non-executive board member, a role that requires silence to relearn how to listen. She looks at the faces in front of her, those who once avoided her gaze in the elevator, those who stayed silent in meetings she used to lead. And for the first time, Evelyn does not look for reasons to push back. She takes notes, not to prepare a response, but to remember. That afternoon, Evelyn attends her first training session with Dr. Keisha Moore, an independent DEI expert. A small room, hard chairs, no conference table. Dr. Moore looks directly at Evelyn. You've worked in this industry for 20 years, she says. Why are you only confronting your bias now? Evelyn opens her mouth, then closes it. Because I thought I was a good person, she finally says. I voted the right way. I donated. I believed that was enough. Dr. Moore nods. That's passive allyship, she says. What Marcus Reed experienced was active harm. Evelyn lowers her head. How do I live with that? She asks. By not performing, Dr. Moore replies. By changing for real. Not to be forgiven, but to not repeat it. The following weeks unfold in a new rhythm. Meetings change structure. Those who once spoke little begin to speak. Ideas previously dismissed are reconsidered, not because of who said them, but because of their value. The power gap slowly narrows, not perfectly, not quickly, but genuinely. 3 months later, Marcus Brooks stands before the auditorium at the next all-hands meeting. We're not there yet, he says, but look how far we've come. The slide appears. Diverse candidate interview rates up 67%. Promotion gap reduced to 18%. 0 complaints closed without investigation. 87% of employees say culture has clearly improved. This time, the applause lasts longer. At the back, Evelyn stands with everyone else. She claps slowly, steadily, not seeking eye contact, not seeking recognition. She knows she is not the center of this change. And that is precisely how it should be. That evening, Evelyn opens her laptop and revisits an old interview with Marcus Reed. Systems don't change because one person apologizes. They change when those with power accept losing some of that power. Evelyn nods as if he were speaking directly to her. She closes the laptop. Outside the window, Seattle lights up in the night. There is no longer a sense that the city lies beneath her feet, only the feeling that she is a tiny part of it. And for the first time in many years, Evelyn Harper does not feel afraid of that feeling. Because when you are no longer standing at the center, you can finally see the whole picture. 3 months after the first cultural audit at Harper Dynamics. The story could have ended there. A CEO steps down, a company restructures, an investment is salvaged. But some stories, once they are named for what they truly are, cannot return to the old way of doing things. And this story has moved beyond the 4 walls of Harper Dynamics. It all begins with a video. Not a carefully produced video, no background music, no narration. Just security camera footage from the lobby of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Slightly grainy images, a fixed angle, a timestamp glowing in the corner of the screen. Evelyn Harper stands upright, her hand pointing toward the door. Marcus Reed stands across from her, silent, keeping his distance. 2 security guards step forward. You can't hear the words, but you can read the lips. Get him out. The clip lasts less than a minute, but within 48 hours it is shared millions of times. Netflix announces a documentary project. Mistaken Identity, Power, Bias, and Silicon Valley. The film does not begin with Evelyn. It does not begin with Marcus. It begins with people who cannot demand accountability, as Marcus did. A black female engineer, her face shadowed. In 2 years on the job, 3 people asked if I was an intern. A Latino manager, his voice altered. They said I was too aggressive in meetings. My white colleague was called decisive. An Asian technical employee. I was praised for being hardworking, never for leadership potential. The stories continue. Not angry, not shouting. Just the accumulated exhaustion of people who are always required to prove that they belong. Marcus Reed appears midway through the film. He sits in his familiar New York office, the Manhattan skyline behind him. What happened to me, he says slowly, happens every day to people without money, without reputation, without power. He looks directly into the camera. The only difference is that I had enough standing to demand accountability. They don't. That sentence becomes the headline of hundreds of articles. The documentary reached 12 million views in its first month. Business schools add it to their curricula. Harvard writes a case study. Stanford hosts panel discussions. For the first time, bias is no longer an abstract moral issue. It is a concrete business risk. In the tech industry, the ripple effect spreads quickly. 12 major companies announce internal cultural audits. Some do it because they believe it is necessary. Some do it because employees demand it. Investment firms begin asking new questions in quarterly reports. What does this company's leadership team look like? Who is being promoted and who isn't? No longer suggestions. Requirements. Amid this wave, Marcus Reed expands his fund. The Reed Black Founder Fund grows to $250 million. 47 companies are funded in the first year. 89% are still operating. More than 2,300 jobs are created. At a TED Talk, Marcus stands on stage wearing a hoodie and jeans. The title of his talk, Dignity Should Not Require a Forbes Ranking. One line from his talk is shared everywhere. Respect is not a reward for success. It is the starting point of being human. And Evelyn Harper. She agrees to appear in the documentary, not to justify herself, not to manage her image, only to answer questions she had never asked herself before. Do you understand that your actions were racist? The director asks. Evelyn looks straight into the lens. She looks older, more tired. Yes, she says. I saw a black man dressed casually and assigned him a lower status. I didn't see a person. I saw a stereotype. Some people say you only apologized because you were caught. Evelyn is silent for a few seconds. They may be right, she says. If he hadn't been Marcus Reed, I might never have faced consequences. And that is the problem. The system protects people like me. That statement leaves the screening room silent. 3 months later, 3 former employees of color from Harper Dynamics filed lawsuits. The case files run nearly 100 pages. Internal emails, promotion data, familiar phrases, not a cultural fit, lacks leadership presence. The cases are settled out of court. The settlement amount is undisclosed, but sources indicate it is in the 7-figure range. The plaintiff's attorney tells the press, money doesn't erase harm, but accountability is where it begins. Evelyn experiences that change in deeply personal ways. At a grocery store, a woman recognizes her. You're Evelyn Harper, the woman says. You should be ashamed. No shouting, no argument, just a sentence. Then the woman walks away. At a familiar restaurant, the host looks at the reservation list. I'm sorry, we're fully booked. But Evelyn can see empty tables behind him. She doesn't react. She simply nods and leaves. These small moments accumulate, not enough to compare with what others endure for a lifetime, but enough to transform someone who once lived in absolute safety. At a Stanford panel discussion, a student asks Marcus Reed, do you regret investing in Harper Dynamics? Marcus thinks. I regret that it took public shame for change to happen, he says. But I don't regret giving them a chance to do better. 3,000 employees deserved that. The student asks another question. Do you think Evelyn Harper has truly changed? Marcus smiles faintly. I think she's trying. And in a world of power, truly trying is already rare. The story is no longer about a refused handshake. It becomes a mirror for companies, for leaders, for each of us, anyone who has ever, even once, judged someone before they had the chance to speak. And when silence is no longer accepted, when buried stories begin to be told, society has no choice but to listen. 1 year later. The lobby of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel is still there. The soaring glass ceiling, the polished marble floors, the crystal chandeliers casting tiny prisms of light across the ground. On the surface, nothing seems to have changed. But if you listen closely, you can sense a different rhythm. No more guarded, whispered conversations, no more assessing glances asking who belongs here. There are suits, polo shirts, leather shoes, and sneakers, and no one needs to explain why they are wearing what they wear. Today is the annual investor conference of Harper Dynamics. 200 guests, faces from different cultures, different ages, different starting points. Laughter comes more naturally now, without strain. Handshakes happen unhurriedly, without the need to prove anything. At the main entrance, Evelyn Harper stands waiting, not seated among the investors, not busy greeting everyone, just standing there, as if waiting for one person alone. Evelyn is no longer CEO. She is the non-executive chair of the board, a role that came after multiple audits, many difficult conversations, and countless moments of listening more than speaking. Her outfit is simpler than before. No extravagance, no display. She stands straight, hands loosely clasped in front of her, breathing steady. There is no ready-made social smile. At exactly 9 a.m., a car pulls up in front of the hotel. Marcus Reed steps out. A charcoal polo shirt, neatly pressed khaki pants, and clean white sneakers. In his hand is the familiar brown leather portfolio, the same one that was here a year ago. He pauses for a brief moment at the entrance, not out of hesitation, but recognition. The doors open. Light pours in. Evelyn sees him immediately. She steps forward. "Mr. Reed," she says, then stops. "Marcus, thank you for coming." She extends her hand, not quickly, not expectantly, without a probing look. Marcus looks at the offered hand for a brief moment, a moment carrying a great deal of memory. Then he takes it. The handshake is firm, calm, and professional. Not the handshake of a deal. However, the handshake of a year of accountability was consistently honored. "Thank you for the invitation," Marcus says. "Victoria," he pauses, smiling slightly. "Evelyn." 2 names. A boundary crossed by time, not by promises. They walk into the lobby together. Inside the hall, Marcus Brooks, the new CEO of Harper Dynamics, stands on stage. 11 months of leadership have not made him flashier, but they have made him more trusted. "Welcome, everyone," Marcus Brooks says. "The past year has been the hardest and also the most important year in Harper Dynamics history." The first slide appears. Revenue up 127%. Merger completed. Cash flow stabilized. The next slide. Employee satisfaction 4.2 out of 5, up from 2.8 the previous year. But numbers, Marcus Brooks says, tell only part of the story. He looks out at the audience. "Look around you." The executive team stands, 10 people. 4 are people of color, 5 are women. 1 uses a wheelchair. "This is not accidental," Marcus Brooks says. "It is intentional, strategic, and the result of our willingness to change how we define leadership." Applause fills the room, long, steady, unprompted. In the front row, Evelyn applauds with everyone else. She seeks no one's gaze, no validation. She simply occupies her place. After the presentation, a panel discussion begins on stage. The moderator from Bloomberg turns to Marcus Reed. A year ago, she asks, you were escorted out of this very hotel. Today you return as a strategic investor. What changed? Marcus leans toward the microphone. Not me, he says. What changed were the actions that followed. He turns toward Evelyn. Evelyn did something rare, he continues. She took responsibility, not through a press release, but through painful, sustained change. The moderator turns to Evelyn. If you could speak to the version of yourself from 1 year ago, she asks, what would you say? Evelyn thinks for a long time. Back then, she says slowly, I believed success gave me the right to judge. I was wrong. She looks out across the hall. I would tell myself this. Privilege can blind you, and the cost of that blindness is not paid by you alone. She turns to Marcus. No one should have to become a billionaire to be treated with dignity, Evelyn says. Applause rises again, not for drama, but because the truth has been named. Backstage, in a quiet hallway, Evelyn and Marcus pause for a moment. Marcus, Evelyn says, I know I've said this many times, but thank you for not walking away. Marcus shakes his head gently. I didn't do it for you, he replies. I did it for every person of color who's been judged before they had the chance to speak. For everyone who's had to prove their humanity before their competence. Evelyn nods. And I understand that now, she says. That's why this matters. They shake hands again. This time, it is no longer symbolic. It is simply respect built through action. At the end of the day, as the hall empties, Marcus Reed stands and looks once more at the hotel lobby. A year ago, this place closed behind him. Today, it opens, not for him, but for a different way of seeing power. No applause, no cameras, only a quiet truth. Change is possible, but it is never free. And if there is anything worth carrying forward from this story, it is not the redemption of one individual, but the reminder that dignity does not need to be earned. It needs to be respected. The camera stops rolling. There is no longer a conference, no stage lights, no applause. There is only Marcus Reed, standing alone in his familiar office in New York. Behind him, the city glows with thousands of illuminated windows in the night, each window a different story, a different life, a person trying to be seen for who they truly are. Marcus looks directly into the lens. Not with the gaze of a billionaire, not with the gaze of an investor, but with the gaze of a man who has spent his life being judged before he ever had the chance to speak. 1 year ago, he says slowly, a woman looked at me and decided that I didn't belong there. He pauses. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't ask where I came from. She didn't ask what I could contribute. His voice is not angry, not bitter. It is simply the truth, spoken without embellishment. She refused to shake my hand. She called security. And she had me removed from a space where I had every right to exist just like anyone else. Marcus exhales deeply. This story became famous not because I'm a billionaire, he says, but because so many people recognized something they had lived through themselves. He tilts his head slightly as if speaking directly to each person watching. The person was judged as not professional enough, not a cultural fit, not having the right leadership presence, just because of how they look. Marcus looks down at his hands, the hands that were once denied that first handshake. Most people who experience this, he continues, don't have money, don't have status, don't have power to demand accountability. A pause. The only real difference between me and them is that I had the ability to say no and force others to listen. The screen cuts. Evelyn Harper appears in a different setting, not a boardroom, not a stage, but a small classroom at Stanford. She stands before a group of students. No microphone, no raised podium, just a whiteboard behind her. On it, she writes 2 words: unconscious bias. None of us wake up in the morning intending to hurt someone, Evelyn says, but so much harm is caused by assumptions we never stop to examine. She turns back to the young faces in front of her. I used to believe my success was proof of my fairness, she says. I used to believe I was a good person. Evelyn smiles faintly, not a proud smile, but the smile of someone who has passed through disillusionment. It turns out, she says, the most dangerous thing isn't malice. It's blind confidence that you can't be wrong. The camera returns to Marcus Reed. This is not a story about a bad person becoming a good one, he says. And it's not a story about forgiveness. He emphasizes each word. This is a story about accountability. Marcus walks closer to the window, looking down at the traffic below. Accountability is not a moment, he says. It's not a speech. It's not a carefully written apology. He turns back. Accountability is a series of choices, difficult, uncomfortable, and often very lonely. Quick cuts flash across the screen. Cultural audit meetings, tense conversations, numbers that are hard to hear, people speaking up for the first time. Marcus's voice continues, steady and clear. We live inside systems, he says, and those systems teach us who matters, who has a voice, who deserves to be heard. Text appears on screen. Systems don't change because of an apology. They change when people with power accept losing some of that power. Marcus faces the camera again, his expression more serious. So the real question isn't, did Evelyn Harper change? He shakes his head slightly. The real question is, he pauses. When you walk into a room, have you ever decided that someone didn't belong there? A beat of silence. Have you ever looked at how someone dresses, how they speak, or what they carry, and assigned them less value because of it? Marcus holds the gaze. And if you had power, like Evelyn once did, would you use it to protect your ego, or to repair what you've done wrong? The screen slowly fades to black. Marcus's voice continues. This story was shared millions of times because people enjoy seeing power challenged. His tone deepens. But real change isn't entertaining. It's slow, it's hard, and it requires you to look directly at the parts of yourself you're not proud of. Final image. The lobby of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Quiet, empty. Marcus's voice is heard one last time. Dignity is not something you earn through achievement. It doesn't depend on business cards, bank accounts, or titles. A pause. You are born with it. Black screen. Text appears. Accountability is not a moment. It's a practice. A calm, steady narrator's voice follows. Life doesn't change because a story goes viral. It changes when we stop and question how we see other people. If this story made you think, please share it, not to attack anyone, but to open a necessary conversation. Like, if you believe respect should be unconditional, Comment if you've ever been judged before you had the chance to speak. And subscribe to Deep Life Tales, where true stories remind us to slow down and live with more kindness. You don't need to prove your worth to deserve respect. The most dangerous bias isn't prejudice, it's believing you don't have one.